Wow, that is a great question. The question is in reference to taking workflow or rule-based workflow that you created using SharePoint Designer, and then moving that from the authored environment over to the actual production environment. Actually, we've had issues with that. All I can say is good luck, a lot of praying. What we've actually done, that's one piece of the content deployment that's still, we're stuck with the manual process. What we've done in the past is copy the content of the files that are generated by SharePoint Designer and paste it in maybe a text file, go into the mirrored environment, kick off the workflow creation, and then taking that content and copying it into each file to ensure that we have it, which is, again, that falls outside of what I've been talking about.
We'll also go over and backup and restore.
The backup and restore, well.
And I'm talking about STS Atom at the site collection level.
Well, or you can use the export feature in SharePoint Designer, which
doesn't work.
Again, it's problematic at best. That's exactly what I wanted to add. Any other questions?
We're talking about content as far as content concerned in database, but we've been having problems with, like you showed when you change the page content, it kept track of the versions.
Okay.
But it doesn't seem to keep track of like HTML web parts or anything that's on the page and not in the database. Does that still get carried over from site to site?
Let me make sure I understand your question. If a content author adds a web part to a page, right?
Like the HTML editor, something that's not in the database but on the page.
Oh, the content, you're talking about the content editor web part. That's another area that we're waiting on them to fix.
So when you do from site to site, you change that and carry it over?
It actually, we would expect it to. And I'm not allowed to say no. Again, there are some bugs. I didn't get a chance to talk about a lot of the bugs, but how about I address everyone's concern? Test, 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 test. You're used to this, right, Susan? Test, test, test. You're going to have to test it out. It's not perfect. The service pack, the infrastructure update was supposed to fix a lot of things associated with the content deployment. I hadn't had a chance to test out that particular issue with the content editor web part. So, yeah, test it out, shoot me an email so I can spread the word. I won't get a chance to probably interview.
So realistically, you need the SP1, which is obviously no brainer for SharePoint. You need the SP1 on the SharePoint Designer, and you need the infrastructure update to really do any kind of relevant work.
Well, if you want to put it that way, you need the SP1 for WSS.
Right.
You need the SP1 for MOS. You're going to need the infrastructure update. You need the SP1 for SharePoint Designer. And a lot of patience and sleep. I'm just being honest here. I mean, right now we're waiting on them to finalize a couple of fixes.
Can you speak to a good balance of how often the deployment path, job you set up should run? In our production environment, we mainly have publishing sites, but then people can create blogs and wikis. Those don't have a quick deploy option.
Okay.
Since they're not publishing sites. So, they may, if we set it to once a day, they do a blog post, it doesn't show up till the next day.
Right. Well, and by the way, everybody, quick deploy feature allows certain individuals to quickly deploy updates versus waiting on the schedule. So they can actually submit the updated content throughout the day. Really, honestly, I think a good practice is to set up a schedule on a 24-hour basis. And maybe you need to consider leveraging quick deploy, because you all are not utilizing it, for trusted individuals to update their own content. But of course, I would expect for you to train those people. I think you want to add something.
Just to add, you can actually use an RSS viewer to get immediate updates using the blog. That might be a good way to get around the limitations of the publishing.
Well, I'm sort of biased with RSS feed because in SharePoint you only allow anonymous access.
Unless you use Kerberos.
Yep, unless you're on Kerberos. How many on Kerberos? Yeah, a small percentage. All right. Any other questions? Come on. This is a party, everybody. We at least have 5 more minutes.
For the content.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Content deployment. So that would also work in theory to go from the production back down to the mirror, get it all updated, but in theory you shouldn't need that, I'm wondering. is
Well,
there-
really, I'm looking at it one way.
Okay.
The question is in reference to content deployment from the mirror environment to production and from production to mirror. Traditionally, we're looking at a one-way deployment from, again, from your authored environment. And honestly, I think it's a good practice to make sure that production environment is read-only. Because I wouldn't even want my content authors to really work on that directly. And so most of the implementation that I've seen in such a scenario, you're going across a firewall, and maybe it's targeting individuals outside of the organization. That's a typical deployment. But again, content deployment can be problematic, and it seems like some of you all have already run into it. And so again, we were expecting a lot of the updates to take care of that. Okay.
You have a good blog post on your recommendation to go ahead and use Designer to edit master pages, because in all of our governance discussions, it's flat out, everybody says, and it's just based on what they've read other places, nobody touches master pages in Designer. They're going to be done in Visual Studio, they're going to be deployed as features. That's it.
Well, the reason why most would lean towards such a best practice, and again, believe me, they probably didn't mention it, but that's because of a business practice or a requirement. If you all plan on centrally, totally controlling branding, SharePoint Designer should not be used at all. But if there's going to be some flexibility, which I do believe you should have some flexibility, even if you use nested master pages, right? Nested master pages can be used in SharePoint. It's just not used out of the box, right? So I can give you a scenario with one of the active universities that I've worked with, right? They wanted to give the different colleges the flexibility to specify their own layout, but they wanted to ensure that the navigational structure, that header, totally represented the university. And so they decided to take the nested master pages route. So centrally, we totally control the header. But we decentralize the branding of other areas of that master page. And you can't control who can modify these different areas, well, not different areas, but who can modify a master page. So I would recommend a combination of both. But again, I wouldn't just make that type of decision based on what I feel. I actually step outside of what I think and follow what's required by the customer. I mean, how many of you think they know everything? I know I'm not the only one, right? So you're going to have to leverage some of the business requirements.
And even if you use Designer to edit the master page, you can usually still package it in Visual Studio. So
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's great because Designer gives you all the styles and everything. You really can't get to in Visual Studio.
Right.
You don't see all the styles in the core SCSS and stuff.
And if I can add some value there, you want to make sure you open that master page up with Visual Studio and save it again.
Yep.
Because there's some automatic
Tags,
changes
those tags, yeah.
made by SharePoint Designer, because SharePoint Designer provides a WYSIWYG environment. You'll notice that it renders the actual controls. Visual Studio doesn't have that capability yet. Microsoft has made a promise to add that feature.
So let's say you're in an intranet environment and you got all of the look and feel locked down, master pages, and you don't have anybody working with Designer.
Mm-hmm.
You just have content, content owners making their content changes using the browser. Is there any value to using the deployment to set up your site, your application?
Well, yeah, because you don't have to, if you want, I'm sorry, the question is, if we have master pages implemented, but we don't want others to make changes to it, you can lock that down. Because I've seen other sites point to a master page at the top level site, let's say for example, when we lock down who can make these changes on the pages library. The question is, can we, is it viable, or is it an option to use the content deployment? Yes, because your content owners, when they change the content on the pages, you can have those updates made into, in my scenario, into the actual production environment.
Right, but why not just have that one application?
Well, you can. Again, it depends on how you want your policies for governance, how you plan on providing guidance, how you plan on controlling. Again, you can leverage one single web app, take advantage of the same publishing features, the approval process, and do the same thing. It's just that if you plan on doing quite a bit of